Thimbleweed Park is a point-and-click adventure game that was released in 2017, but it was designed to look retro. You begin as a man who dies. Then you become the two federal agents who are investigating his death. Later on, your perspective shifts again. A waitress tells a story, and you become the bleeping clown in the story she tells. After you finish the clown's backstory, then you're jettisoned back to the present, and you're playing the two FBI agents again. The player shifts perspective more, too. That shifting was a problem because I already didn't like the characters. They felt even more forgettable with the narrative jumping around. The dead guy was barely alive before he died, which made him seem uninteresting and more like a plot device than a character I'd just played. The two agents also seemed rather bland and interchangeable. They had the same dialogue, and while their motives were obviously different, their presentation in the game was just too similar. Even their names were similar, which was an obvious joke, but still, it wasn't helping them stand apart any. The clown seemed stupid to me, and not in a funny way. He only delivered rude lines, and the game had several jokes surrounding what a jerk he was. None made me laugh. Shifting to his perspective was also oddly jarring in context. It felt as if I was watching a TV show that I wasn't enjoying, and then someone flipped the channel to something worse and clown-related. These aren't the only characters controlled in-game, though. There are more. For example, Dolores is another one, and she shows up later. She's okay, but no character seemed great to me. Meanwhile, the gameplay was simple, and the setting was an intentionally dull, sleepy town. Point-and-click adventure games are usually boosted by their setting and/or cast of characters. With a dull setting and flat characters, my board meter rose quickly. There just wasn't anything at all that I liked and could latch onto. Instead, I just walked around and picked up items while the characters occasionally made meta jokes about point-and-click games and other jokes too. As a result of that, I figured that if Thimbleweed Park couldn't give me any entertainment in the time that a movie would take, then I'd stop playing. At the stopping point, I figured that I could check out a Let's Play to see the ending and read a plot summary to see if I wanted to change my mind about stopping. And eventually that's what happened. I stopped and looked stuff up. But by that point, I had actually played a large chunk of the game. This is because Thimbleweed Park's short. It's only supposed to take about 8 to 10 hours to beat, or 15 hours if you're a completionist. This is also why I bothered to make a short review of it, despite stopping my run. I did play a big chunk of it. And after filling in the blanks in my experience by checking out Let's Play footage of the ending and reading info, I'm certain that if anything, I would have felt more frustrated with the game if I'd kept playing it. I learned that eventually, its plot becomes very meta. This wasn't surprising since many of the jokes were meta. Yet, while Thimbleweed Park's plot does get more complex and has some decent concepts, I do think that the overall presentation of its plot is poor. The beginning drags, which is a problem, and later revelations are more interesting than the earlier parts of the game, but the dialogue, pacing, oh-so-random tone, and flat voice acting stayed consistently weak. That didn't sell the plot or its meta ending to me because I still didn't care about the story. Altogether, it had some creative bits in it, but I didn't think that these bits were great enough to compensate for its flaws. I also didn't think that the meta ending was particularly wonderful. Yet, despite the flaws, if the game's humor's up your alley, then you may still like it. It has a silly sort of tone, which would relieve boredom if the humor tickles you. Jokes such as these are scattered throughout the game.
Let's photograph the victim and head into town to talk to the local sheriff. The body is starting to pixelate.
Body starting to pixelate.
It's a good photo of the body. I like how the state-of-the-art camera can alter the angle of the shot.
The coroner and the sheriff are the same person.
Well, there might be some resemblance around the eyes, but that's about it. The sheriff does this annoying a Reno thing, and the coroner does an annoying a who. It pretty much proves they're not the same person.
How does speech prove they're not the same person?
You're asking a lot of questions that probably shouldn't be asked.
I'm a federal agent. That's my job.
I've said too much already.
Also, we have a deal worth millions to license a line of toddler Ransom the Clown talking insult dolls.
Did you get the liability clause waived?
Correct. They will assume all liability when the kids grow up to be beepholes.
Good. Toddlers start out as It's not my fault they end up that way.
But it wasn't my kind of humor, so there was no comedic relief for me. Another big problem was in the delivery of these lines. Since I didn't enjoy the voice acting and thought it sounded artificial, attempts to be funny also sounded too try-hard to me. That said, the voices can be turned off. However, I think that even mediocre lines can be elevated when they're delivered well by an actor. Lines being made worse instead of better was disappointing. I'm pointing out all this humor stuff because humor is very subjective, and I think it really influences whether or not a player will like the game. The game does have its fans, and I imagine that its humor is a big part of why. So keep that in mind, because whether or not you'll like this game probably depends a lot on whether or not you like its jokes. If you find it funny, then your personal rating will likely be much higher than my own. As for the look and the sound, it's okay. The retro style that they went with works well enough. However, it often lacks a sort of detail and charm. Some parts seem to get more detail than others, which looks a little weird visually, such as in the beginning. Objects sometimes look a little off in size, too. The music is a bit better than the graphics, though. It blends in well when playing.